Hey, what's up, guys? We did it. We made it to another weekend. Hope that you are doing well. I want to continue our reflections on the book of James. You know, we did James 1, 2, and 3 on Wednesday for our virtual gathering. And I'd like to finish that up just to give you some quick devotional thoughts about the scriptures, the passages that we've been reading. I challenged us, if you're just catching up or didn't know about this, we've been reading the book of James all this week. And I just challenge you to read it if you haven't, reread it if you've already read it. I mean, there's a bunch of good stuff in here. And again, I just kind of wanted to put some reflections out on the table for us to kind of pick, and just kind of chew on, think about, and obviously apply, to our lives. So let's pick up where we left off in chapter 4. He's talking about, like asking for things and being worldly. And in verse 3, he says, "You ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly to spend on your passions." We pray for so many things, and it's so easy to pray about anything because God says to present our requests to him. He wants to hear from us. But we ask so arrogantly. We ask without thinking about what is God's plan for this. Sometimes we'll pray that, a sickness will end, a pandemic will end, a certain characteristic in ourselves will be built up so that we can become a better person, kind of thing. You know what I mean? But are we asking to serve God? Are we asking for his will to be done? Or are we asking selfishly? What James is trying to say here is that we need to be asking for godly things. If it be your will. I mean, remember what Jesus even prayed. He says, before he went to the cross, before he was about to die for the sins of the world, he was asking God, if there's another way for this to happen, then make it happen. But I don't want it to be my will. I want it to be your will. So even Jesus was praying, like in his human form. He was both God and human. His human form was praying, let there be another way. But if not, I'll go through with this. I want the godly thing to be done. And that's what happened. So whatever you're praying for, whatever you're asking for, I just want to challenge you to pray for the right reasons. Pray with unselfish motives, because that's what James is challenging us to do here. Going a little bit further down in verse 7 and 8, he says, "Submit yourselves therefore to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you, and draw near to God, and he will draw near to you." We face temptations and sin and evil every single day. How can we avoid temptation, sin, evil, all of that stuff? Draw near to God, and God will draw near to you and to me. And when that happens, Satan runs as far away as he can, because not only does he hate God, he can't stand to be around him, but he's scared to death of God because of how powerful God is. Okay, God could easily wipe him out with just the snap of a finger. And in the end, it says in the Bible that he is going to be tossed and put into the deepest, darkest hole in hell. Like he's going to be in the lowest point. And so he knows he's defeated. So he's trying to get as far away from God as he possibly can. So when you and I are facing evil and temptation and all that kind of stuff, if we draw near to God, God's going to draw near to us, and Satan is going to get as far away from us as possible, which means the evil in our life is slowly but surely going to deteriorate and slowly but surely leave us. So that's a challenge that James lays out for us. He also says, humble yourself before the Lord and he will lift you up, or he will exalt you. So make yourself low, ask for what's the word I'm looking for humility. Ask for humility. Be humble when you come before God. Recognize that he is the all-powerful God and that you are a filthy, rotten, dirty sinner. That's what it means to humble yourself before God, and then he will lift you up. Be genuine about that. Make that come from the heart when you talk to him. Ask for things. Okay, then he goes on and talks about boasting about tomorrow in verses 13 to 17. And basically what he's saying here is that, just to use one of his phrases, he says, you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. In other words, we only have a few short years here on earth compared to eternity, and we need to be using them wisely. We can't be arrogantly planning for the future like it's going to be a guarantee. Okay, it's great to want to be married. It's great to want to have kids, go to a certain college, be at a certain position in life. but we can't just think it's going to automatically happen for us. Like our life could be demanded of us tomorrow. And so we're a mist, and we need to think of ourselves as a mist. If we need to do something, we need to do it today. He even says, whoever knows the right thing to do but doesn't do it is in sin, is living in sin. So if we know the right thing to do, let's do it right now. Okay, if you need to call somebody, text somebody, do some kind of ministry, get right with God now, do it now, because your life is a mist. All right. He then goes on and talks about being patient in our suffering. And he says that establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. You know, during all of the suffering and all of the pain and stuff that we go through, focus on the thought that Jesus is coming back and that he's going to set everything right. He uses the illustration of a farmer who plants crops. And, you know, once you plant the crop, you can't just expect it to bloom and be at full ripeness by tomorrow. It just takes time. That's how gardening works. And that's how suffering works as well. In the very first chapter, if you remember, James talks about, you know, being joyful in our suffering and our trials, because God is developing something in you, okay? It just takes time to grow, for you to see it and for God to develop it. So take joy in that and focus on the return of Christ. Those two things will give you hope and peace during the time of suffering and temptation and trials. He then ends his book on the power of prayer. He uses the example of Elijah in the Old Testament. And Elijah prayed for it not to rain, and it didn't rain for 3.5 years. Like, that's how powerful prayer can be. So we need to approach God in our prayers and be careful what we're asking for, because sometimes God's going to give us things that we're not ready to handle. So just know that your prayers can be extremely powerful, but they also, again, need to be very humble in your asking. All right, guys, those are just some really quick reflections on the book of James. I hope that you have enjoyed reading that book. Again, if you haven't, I encourage you to do so. There's a lot of good things in there. Reread it, okay? Reread this book as much as you can, and continue to reflect on them and continue to become better Christians and better children of God. All right, guys, hope to see you soon.